Hello, adventurers. My name's Tyler.
And I'm Richard.
On today's episode, joined by the one and only Dead Aussie Gamer, we'll be discussing the benefits of tabletop gaming and what it means for your mental health. Welcome to True Strike.
Howdy, folks, and welcome back to our show. You heard right. We have Dead Aussie Gamer with us today. Welcome to our little corner of the internet, Dag.
G'day, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I always love getting to meet all new people who are like so passionate about D&D that they become content creators, and it's great to finally meet both of you.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting to have you on the show. We have seen you before. We saw you live, actually, at Gen Con this year.
Yeah, we actually forgot to mention that in getting to meet,
Yeah,
getting
right.
to know you. Yeah, we saw you and Duke and Pals, and that was wonderful. And we literally, I think we've talked about you like at least once a week since in our upper echelon of favorite GMs. Just because, man, you are quick and witty.
Thank you. That's so nice. Gen Con was such a blur, and yeah, no, I wish I could say that I recognized the two of you from the event, but to be honest, I was so run off my feet. I couldn't tell you, but the games were so amazing and they were so much fun, and it was so great to actually get to be together with the people that I've worked with for so long. Duke, of course, is amazing and so much fun, and I got the pleasure of actually hanging out with him twice this year. So I was, living in Australia, it's a little hard to kind of get out there and actually meet and hang out with people. But yeah, no, Gen Con was such good memories this year, I swear.
Awesome. Well, today we wanted to talk to you and us about mental health and tabletop gaming and how they mingle together.
Yeah, it's something we've been talking about doing. We've dipped into it every now and then amongst our echelon of episodes, and we've been wanting to put together a full episode. Especially it's in my household. My wife does a lot with mental health and different like children and adults and like getting them ready for society and stuff. And we were actually just talking about it one day. And I think actually me and Richard worked together, and I was joking with him, and I was like, you know what? It would be really cool to have someone like fun on this. And I was like, you should try for Dag. And he was like, nah, you try for Dag. And I was like, fine, I will. And you were like, bet. And I was like, Richard, guess what?
Oh,
so that was awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
look. No, I love this, and the thing is this is actually a great topic and one that is actually very near and dear to me. For those of you who don't know, in addition to the content creation stuff that I do, the other side of my job is I work for the Australian government running TTRPGs for at-risk young people here in Australia, setting up programs that run games like Dungeons and Dragons to try and promote wellness through gaming, and so a topic like this is very much something that I'm very passionate about. It's something that I've dedicated my life to trying to educate people about and try to, help people try and facilitate and get to that place where, things like the games we enjoy are helping our mental wellness all the time.
That's awesome. Every once in a while I see it, especially, Wizards themselves, making a little push here and there to get it into schools and libraries here in America. But I don't ever hear about the government actually stepping forward to use, tabletop gaming as the tool it can be for this kind of thing. So, wow, I didn't realize Australia's just ahead on that. That's awesome.
Well, okay, so truth be told, I was actually one of the first advocates for this in Australia.
Okay.
Or at least in WA. I know that when I first started, the general consensus was that I am in youth services and I'm running a youth event, and these events were just available for young people to come in the similar way that you would, offer, a library session or something like that, a public event that young people could come and access. But what I ended up doing over the years was spending a lot of time talking to my colleagues, talking to other members of local governments about just the absolute benefits that occur from things like tabletop role-playing game. The ability
Mhm.
to focus on matters that are becoming more and more prevalent in today's society. Even things like self-identity and stuff like that are
Yes.
hugely explored in TTRPGs. And as soon as I started leaning into those wellness aspects of gaming, other local government bodies started wanting to do it as well and would approach me and ask, like how to set up the program. They asked for recommendations on game masters around their local areas, and it was just a great privilege to be able to like help facilitate this. So while I would say it is a government body,
Mhm.
we're still kind of a little bit far away from the tax man coming around and rolling some dice for you. It's like, okay, listen, buddy, like your taxes are overdue, but if you can beat the bugbear horde, we
Right.
might let it slide.
But one day, getting there.
One day, yeah, who knows?
Oh, that's so cool. One of the like I mentioned, this is something we wanted to bring up for a while now, and you touched on a little bit there with self identity and stuff. And I would love. I mean, I'm going to call it expert opinion on this, but when I look at tabletop, one of the best things is, at least for me personally, is being able to explore the different areas of my own personality, for example, or even my kids. Like they'll play. I'll run games for them, and the different ways you can express yourself and little ideas and things you've had that you can't do in your everyday life, where you kind of get molded into, I am a person, I have to function, I can't just walk into a bar, like kick over a table and demand a drink. I mean, yeah, not saying that's always going to work at tabletop either, but you can explore that interaction.
Mm.
And you got to go to work and you got to pay your bills. And I mean, at least for us, once every other week, no, we get to meet up and just be different people. And when that story's over, we all have these memories and we get to make new characters and tell new stories. And it's so cathartic, and it's like all of us look forward to it. I mean, we're a group of 5 that just, all right, oh man, it's coming up on Tuesday, we get to we get to play D&D. Heck yes, thank you. And the kids, they'll come up over the weekend and they'll be like, hey, can we play? And every time they do a new little campaign, they're play different characters, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna be like a rogue, I'm gonna be like super like gravelly and sneaky, and or like, oh, I'm gonna be hippity hoppity, like Herringon. And it's fun, like seeing how different people react, especially first time players, because it seems like, at least from my experience, people are always like the better version of themselves, the heroic version of themselves for their first character, and then they pull apart their flaws maybe on the second one, and really delve into something that's a problem, even in their own life. They'll like, oh, maybe they had an issue with parents or something, and they'll put that into the character. And then your third character is always off the wall. It's zany. And it could be whatever. And I don't know. Have you seen a lot of that in people? I mean, especially younger people and stuff. You've gone around and played ranked games for.
Oh, yeah, of course. Not just young people either. So there are so many. I would borderline almost say an infinite amount of methods that people access tabletop role playing games, and whatever the
Mm-hmm.
game system, whatever the game type, it draws out so many different aspects to how we explore and engage this game. Now I
Mm-hmm.
know that's a whole bunch of waffly stuff. So in kind of a simpler term, I always use what I like to call the Avengers logic. The Avengers logic is where if I look at a player, I can tell what kind of player you are when it comes to making characters and what you're trying to get out of it. So
Okay.
starting with Captain America. Now, Captain America is a hero. Of course, Captain America is a hero. Everyone knows this, right? But everyone knows Captain America is Steve Rogers, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's never a barrier that tells people Captain America isn't Steve Rogers or whoever happens to be the Captain America at the time, for the comic bird nerds out there.
Right.
Um, we have players who will roleplay a character and will tell you that, my name is Xanthus the Elven Wizard, but
Yes.
in every aspect of the game, no, you're still, Dan, who is sitting at my table. You're not really delving into the role play here. You're enjoying the game, you're engaging it, and you are playing the hero. Of course you are. But ultimately, I don't see a new character. I see Dan. Those people tend to play the game for catharsis. This is just simply, it's like going for a jog. It's like going to eat some nice food. It is a method for them to just engage and enjoy, but they're not really trying to explore anything. I usually find these people are trying to push that kind of, as you were saying, that reality away, and it adapts to D&D and TTRPGs as that form of escapism, right? That moment where you can feel like you are a part of this world.
Yeah.
The second Avenger archetype is the Iron Man. The Iron Man, you'll find a lot of actors in this category. I know I'm in this category and stuff like that. And that is when you walk away from the game table, you're you know, I'm Michael. Hi, what's up? You know, how you going? Yeah. But the moment you sit down at a game table, all of a sudden you suit up.
Yep.
You are no longer this person. I am now this, hero. I am now, Baldwin, the Dwarven Ranger, and this is who I become. You'll actually find that with the Iron Man archetype, you'll have a lot of people who have things about themselves that they wish to enhance or improve, something that they want to get better at. And I'll often find that people who fall into that category will often tell me what they want to be good at. For example, if my very, very quiet person who is suffering from crippling anxiety decides to play a bard, that for me communicates very clearly that this person wants to learn how to communicate. If somebody who does this tends to play a lot of like fightery classes and stuff like that, for me, it kind of communicates that this person has some stuff that they would need to work through, but might not necessarily know how to ask for it or, work through stuff like that. They're the people who try to hide stuff about themselves so they can just do the thing that, that helps bring them that kind of measure of comfort. The third type, which of course for me is probably one of my favorite, and that is the Hulk. The Hulk is someone who, and this is very commonly known as the kick the door down gamer. The kick the door down gamer is what I deal with a lot, especially because I work with kids, and that is, I don't quite fully understand what's going on here, but I'm gonna hit it with a big stick.
Yeah.
And that's and then you get that a lot with kids, right? Because the younger you are,
yes.
the less in tune you are with those aspects of mental health and mental wellness. You're not at the game to try and work through your issues of trying to find out, what your gender identity and stuff like this. It's like, no, I get to roll big dice and you listen to the sound that my clacky math rocks make. You're doing this in kind of like, and I know this sounds very, very mean, but you're doing it in a very basic way, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's fun, it's great, it's engaging, and you can very clearly see those elements to it. Then of course we can't forget Thor. Thor is probably one of my favorite ones because you see them very rarely in young people, but when you do, it is magic. Thor is a storyteller. Thor is a legend. He is history. He is built upon the back of a grand tale that then is embodied in this game. You'll often find players will write very, very in tune backstories and fill it with very, very rich lore, and they will know about the world, and they'll know about the cultures, and they'll know about all these stuff. They are a GM's dream when it comes to engaging with a campaign. These particular characters are those who have that kind of artistic spark and who wish to learn how to express it. And those, for me, are the people who are studying and like learning about themselves and learning about, where they fit in this world, because they are starting to expand their mind beyond just themselves. How am I perceived? Where do I go? How do I fit into this world? How do I move in this world? And what can I do? How can I test the boundaries of what is right, what is wrong, what is socially acceptable, what is not? So the Thor character is, for me, one of those ones who you'll find very, very often with people who are, kind of, again, exploring these identity things. Now, Thor can also be mistaken for a Loki, and here is, again, the Avenger thing works so well, and I can't even begin.
This is amazing already.
So here is how Thors become Lokis. A Loki is someone who pretends to be Thor. They'll write a backstory. They'll have a really, really good idea. They'll throw in together a ton of stuff that'll sound like really good storytelling, but really all it is kind of making excuses for a ton of broken mechanics because they're really hiding behind the veil of a good story by saying, yes, my grandfather, you see, he had a katana, and that katana was attached to a musket. Can I have a katana musket? I've just made one because, my story, very important in my story, that I have a katana musket that does a D12 range damage and is a two-handed melee weapon as well. Very important aspects to identify my character. So again, that for me is a Loki. That is one person who, and in Australia we have a saying, it's called taking the piss, right? Loki's take the piss. Lokis are very much no, you're just having me on. And you know what? Sometimes I'll be like, you cheeky bastard. You know what? Fine. You put in the effort here, have this thing. Yep. Other times I'm just like, no, go back. Go back and do it again.
I can't help but respect a Loki. I mean, anytime I have one player in particular who he'll text things. It's at the table. He'll never come up front in front of everybody. Just mention what his plan or idea is. You'll get a burp, and you look behind the screen and you just look at him and you're either like, okay, I'm into it, or no, stop. Just stop, please.
They are endearing to say the least. They are absolutely endearing. All right, cutting through these super quick. Black Widow. The Black Widow is absolutely amazing. They are the silent hero. These are the people who want to get involved in the game, but may not necessarily engage with the game. People who are quiet, people who don't necessarily put themselves at the front, play a supporting role. I'm sure you've seen them before. Some people call them wallflowers and the like, but ultimately, they play the game well. They enjoy the game. They engage with it. And a lot of people think, and this is just, from culture, from pop culture, and stuff like that, they think that the Black Widow player needs to engage more. People like to turn around and be like, hey, you're not really talking. How about some spotlight? And then shine it in your face. That for me is like, you shouldn't do that, right? A Black Widow player is not necessarily someone who is too shy to take that spotlight, but someone who accepts and enjoys watching the story unfold, enjoying the interactions between their friends as they get hyped up and excited. Some people just gain their energy and gain their wellness through that, and it's a very important thing to accept Black Widows for that, is that they're not there to be the center stage. They don't want it. They don't need it. They're perfectly happy and content and fine and enjoying it in the same full capacity as the guy who has shown up, in cosplay.
Yeah.
They just won't, And lastly, of course, you have the Hawk.
Oh, sorry.
No, go, please.
I was gonna say that definitely reminds me of my wife. She never wants to be the main character. She doesn't want to be, put front and center, even in her own big moments, which, she does get. She makes very interesting plays, but it's always to support the other players. So it's interesting. I really like this all this direction you're putting together, because I've never actually really thought about like a role for each kind of player like this. But this is great. All right, back to you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. The last one is the Hawkeye. The Hawkeye is people call them the Chad players and stuff like that. They're the person who is there to make sure everyone's having a good time. They are the facilitators. They are people who often end up as GMs. They are people who, when they play the game, it is about making sure that everyone's having a good time and everyone feels that support. Everyone feels that kind of nature. I for one, am very careful around Hawkeye players because, one, often they're very quick to be the ones to want to GM, which is great. But they are also the ones who can very quickly get beaten down by, a player table that they just unprepared for. And I've seen it happen a few times, where someone's gotten too excited, they've played 2 games of D&D and turned around and gone, I can run a game, and then run it with a bunch of Chaos Gremlins and go, I will never GM again. And it's like, okay, well, fair, I could have told you where you went wrong there. But, I try to nurture Hawkeye players a lot because I love to see them in that position where they're loving the game so much that they do want to just keep GMing and, they accept and enjoy the ups as well as the downs. Hawkeye players for me always need to be taken very special care of because what's important for them is they won't put themselves first. They won't take the moment to shine. And unlike the Black Widow player, who that's how they get their enjoyment, the Hawkeye player
Mm-hmm.
generally wants to be in the limelight, generally wants their fair turn. But what they deem as a fair turn is often everyone else having a turn before I have a turn, you know, and they'll push themselves to the back by accident, you know. Black Widows and
Right.
Hawkeyes, they don't have, you know, like again, like in the Marvel world, they don't have the special powers. They don't, you know, force themselves into that limelight, into that front zone. But you know, their role is important and a very very valid thing to accept and bring in, nonetheless. And that's kind of yeah, that's the Avengers player roles as I label them, and kind of a little bit on how I deal with them as they come up to the table. Now, of course, there are millions of others, you know, like out there, like the Spider-Man, for example, someone who is, you know, kind of, you know, picked up and learned so much about tabletop role playing that they come in and they're just the absolute MVP superstar on any table. You know, you've got like
Mm-hmm.
tons of, I can name a million of them, but ultimately, the Avengers lot, the Avengers group, they're the ones for me who I look at because these guys individually, great, absolute wonderful role players, but every single one of them, it takes a measure of balance and table management to be able to make sure that everyone is getting the most out of what they want from the game, and not necessarily like keeping people down. You know, making sure those synergies work and making sure everyone's having the best experience they can.
Oh, for sure. And I like this dynamic too, in the sense that you're building a team. You know, if everyone is a Hulk, it's one kind of game, and if everyone is a Black Widow, for this example, you know, maybe that's not the best group to all be playing together.
Right. I mean, if no
But
one
if
wants, I
you,
mean, I've had a whole, actually very recently I had a whole table. I think it was like four people table where everyone was exactly that. No one wanted to say anything. So I would set a scene. I would say, you know, it's like raining. It's in the middle of the night. You're in a wagon. All of a sudden, you hear a cry coming from nearby. Someone is running through the woods. You see a flash of steel and the sounds of wolves. And what do you guys do? And no one said anything. I was like, cool, the
uh,
sound continues. There, you know, like the rain is pelting down even more. Suddenly, this person goes out and falls onto the road in front of you. What do you guys do? And no one even got out of the wagon because no one wanted to say
wow,
anything. Everyone was waiting for someone else to say
someone
something.
else take the first
Right.
step.
Yeah. And you know, like games like that do exist. And they're not,
Yeah.
I mean, they're not ideal, but you need to know how to manage that. You know, knowing that in ahead. What I should have done, which I eventually learned once I got the vibe on them, was I need to move them. So it turned around and says, as they jump out, all of a sudden, you find yourself springing to action. You thrust open the doors and jump out into the rain as the, you know, wet beats down on you. Do you guys draw your weapons? So it's more asking questions. And they're like, yeah, we
Yes.
draw our weapons. Cool, you draw your weapons. Who wants to attack first? Okay, cool. Let's say that this person is the closest. You can attack first. So I'm taking a more hands-on approach with pulling these guys forward as opposed to a strategy. I would never need to do that with, say, a group of Hulks, for example. But what I might need
Right.
to do for a
Yeah.
group of Hulks is measure my own expectation. You find a wizard. The wizard has a quest for you. Oh, you've punched the wizard
Oh
with your
no.
fist. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the wizard's broken, and now you're running from the cops. Oh, okay, cool. We're doing this now. You know, for those of you who are aware, Cucumber from Perception Studios, wonderful, you know, player and puppet performer. I played a game called Maximum Apocalypse with him, where I had this whole thing where I had his co-star from his show asking the group for help, and I was like, this will motivate him. He'll go after his co-star and stuff. It's like, no, he wants a Donatello ice cream. So he started searching for ice cream in the middle of this quest, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess, you know, screw my idea. But yeah,
Yeah.
if you can pivot well, yeah, like none of these archetypes will ever be too scary.
Maybe a curveball. And you mentioned that Hawkeyes can become DMs and GMs. Would
Mm.
you give a role to the GM? I now it's I mean, other than like a Nick Fury, where you're you're
Mm.
organizing like this team, but for your own like sake, like I'm running games personally more than I'm playing. Doesn't mean I don't like playing. I love playing, But and these like grand campaigns that we put together, everyone comes over and I have friends and each one is their own member of this team for sure. I could go through and you nailed like the different personalities just from that. And so that's amazing. But as a GM yourself, even, do you, I'm making the assumption, do you also get catharsis from running these games? Because I definitely do. It's a huge
Oh,
outlet for me. And and if sucked into work and man, that's just everything's a drag. The mind just starts going and building plans and things I can do for the players. And I think back on decisions they've made and I'll laugh at the silliest things like to myself. And it brings me joy, like just throughout all of my life. I'll be sitting in the car practicing voices and all these little things I get to do just because I'm running a game for my friends. And so where do you think the GM falls, on this team?
That's a great question. So I'll address a couple of them first and foremost. Firstly, in regards to my own personal experience. So
Hmm.
GMing is my full-time job. I do it both at the youth center and I do it online professionally. And so for me, it's a mixture of things. I love my GMing. I love gaming, and I love running and facilitating these tables. It fills me both spiritually and emotionally. But there is obviously that area of fatigue that comes in as well, in general. And that happens no matter what you're doing, you know. Um,
Right.
I don't think that there is a archetype that I could say very definitively, because for me, every GM kind of has their own style. And while there are a few similarities, mostly a GM is based and tied to the experiences that they have as a GM. So if you've had a great experience and a good mentor earlier on in your GMing, I guess, let's say career,
Sure.
then you tend to follow and adopt a lot of the habits of that particular GM. If you happen to have gotten into tabletop role playing through, say, Critical Role or Dimension 20, and you are copying the very animated style of Matthew Mercer and Brendan Lee Mulligan, these are not necessarily archetypes, but more just the elements in our toolboxes as a GM that shape who we are. So it's a lot more versatile, I think, as a GM, because we have so many different influences. It's hard to nail down an archetype. You can definitely tell people. I think for me, it's like I more see people based on how experienced a GM they appear to me. If someone is brand spanking new, I can tell almost instantly because hey, they've made the same mistakes I did. They've
Yeah.
approached the game in a way that I'm like, okay, cool. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff and bits and pieces that aren't fleshed out or things that they haven't done. Or for example, I can tell that someone has done live streaming, for example, the moment they ask me my pronouns when I get to a D&D table. And I know this is going to sound weird because yes, we should be obviously, being mindful of people's gender identities and stuff like that. But when someone comes in, there's a certain spiel, I guess, that comes from live streaming where people are like, okay, cool. So what's your character name? What name would you prefer to be go to? What's your pronouns? What are your lines and veils? These are important things. But the moment that the spiel comes out, I'm like, okay, you've done some streaming or you've watched a streamer who's done this sort of thing. Normally when it comes to a game, even a public game, it's like, like, no, before I've sat down at the table, you know who I am, you know my name, you know my pronouns. We've discussed the lines and veils likely beforehand. Bringing it up at the table as well, making it public is a performance in a way. And for me, that's fine. But like I'm just like, okay, cool, that's that type. If someone turns around and does the Matt Mercer hand grab thing, right? Immediately I go, geez, okay. You know, let's enjoy this person's theatrics because we're gonna have lots of antics. NPCs are gonna betray us, and we're gonna be made into goofballs. And we
Yeah.
had we had we had a game of that when we played the Firefly RPG way back when. We had a guy who was very very much a fan of like that performative stuff, and like it was a whole other thing that was like it was almost trying to replicate um like the mannerisms of some of the celebrity GMs that he'd seen.
Yeah. And it's hard to blame people for that. I mean, the popularity of those shows and stuff, is just crazy. I mean, it really
Yeah.
has blown up,
Yeah, no,
and
absolutely.
I'm thankful for it, just because of how many people I see coming up out of like nowhere that are like all of a sudden really interested in this hobby, and it's like, oh yes, please come inside. It's warm.
Yeah, we need more.
We need more. Please come on.
No, that's
Are we
very
all
true.
going to be a Matt Mercer? No, not always, but you're not always going to be a Liam O'Brien. So come on,
Mm.
let's grow together.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I think one thing that's been very empowering recently, and I mean no disrespect in any kind of way of this. It has been so empowering to not see everyone and their dog being a like mid-40s white guy with a giant beard playing this game. Uh, it's so refreshing to see so many different people from different cultures, different gender identities, different reaches, now diversifying this community that we've been building. I remember this will kind of remain nameless, but when I first got into TTRPGs, I was in a meeting with a bunch of content creators talking about, like just directions and how to grow your business and stuff like that. And it was a meeting of some very very kind of upper tier at the time streaming groups and stuff, and they were talking about the community and stuff. And I had someone who looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're going to be a success." And I said, "Why?" It's like, because you are not a typical white Caucasian male with a giant beard. You have a unique look to you. And I was like, I kind of took that in two ways, because as an actor, I'm very accustomed to being judged on my appearance. Absolutely, and I've got no problem with it either. If you say, "Hey, you've got red hair," I'm like, "Cool, thanks." It's the same thing. For me, it's like it's a feature. It's part of who I am. As long as you're
Yeah.
not like kind of discriminating against me, I'm good. You're fine. It's like, yes, you can point out the fact I have dark skin. That's not a problem.
Mhm.
But the way that this guy did it was almost as if that was the merit of what I was doing. And for me, it's like, that sucked. It really did.
Yeah.
It was like I have a lot to say. I'm a really experienced gamer. I'm a really experienced DM. Like I have so much to offer. And if my success is entirely based on like my appearance, I was like, wow, that's something. But in the years that have been since that incident, that thing that happened, I've
Yeah.
started to see more people getting into this space where that stuff just doesn't matter anymore, and that's wonderful. I mean, when I say it doesn't matter, I don't mean it doesn't matter to the people. I mean, like, people aren't put off, or people aren't turning there and expecting it to be D&D and the community to be a particular demographic. It's now expanding more and more
Yeah.
and more, and we're seeing so many groups that are there showing that hey, TTRPGs are for everyone, and they are. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you look like, doesn't matter what you believe in, as long as it doesn't involve kids and animals. We're good. But but the great thing is that we're all in this space together, and we're all learning, growing, and just so accepting of each other. And that's just been one of the biggest highlights of being an advocate of TTRPGs, wellness in gaming, and all of this stuff.
Yeah, when we went to Gen Con this year, one of the main takeaways we had was just how incredibly welcoming it is for everyone. Because not only do you see across Dungeons and Dragons and these live shows and everything, people watching on Twitch and everything else, the diversity is crazy. It doesn't matter. Everybody is playing everything, and it's awesome. We're all like in this together, and it feels like this hasn't always been like this, so it's super rad. But Gen
Mm.
Con, wow, like everybody from everywhere in the world just seemed so comfortable in their own skin in a way I don't think I've ever seen anywhere.
Yeah, it was one of the main things that we talked about after we came back from Gen Con was the general atmosphere of the entire convention and of all the people that were there. It felt great to be at a place like that, to see the inclusive nature of this hobby that we're in and
Yeah.
where it seems to be and where it's heading, honestly. And
Mm.
that's really exciting.
Yeah, and with Gen Con focusing on not just role playing games, but just tabletop in general, it wasn't necessarily something we expected. This was our first year attending, and we kind of were wondering if it was going to be a white dude beard fest, and no, I mean
Yeah.
not at all. It was really cool.
No, absolutely. This year was my second Gen Con. I went in 2019 before COVID hit
Yeah.
the whole big scene. So I was very fortunate for that. To be honest, I remember everything about that event. I remember just how I was feeling. So I live in Perth, Western Australia. It is a very isolated community, as far as, major cities go in Australia. It's a
Mhm.
very slow-paced city. And here I'm relatively unknown. Like no one knows me from a bag of salt, and that's fine. I'm happy with that.
Sure.
So we don't have conventions like anything that like not like PAX, not like I mean we have PAX Australia, but like that's in Melbourne. We don't have anything
Yeah.
locally. We don't have anything to grow our community in that way. So when I went to Gen Con, it was with a guy from How to Be a Great GM, Janet from World Anvil, and a few small friends that we traveled together with. Because at the time, I think we were doing Ghosts of Saltmarsh for the D&D channel. So we were
Yeah.
all there. We were all like socializing and stuff. And I had never met any of my fans. I'd never interacted with them personally or anything like that. But the moment I got there, all of a sudden, just seeing that kind of acceptance, that community, people rushing up to me, wanting to take photos, wanting to hang out, wanting to say hi, wanting to tell me about their experiences and stuff like that. For
Yeah.
me, that was just it was just mind blowing. I could barely fathom how that worked, And having since gone to other conventions, including of course PAX Australia, for me there is nothing that even comes close to comparing to Gen Con. Like even when I went to PAX, it was fine, it was great, but it felt
Mhm.
like a video game convention with some D&D thrown in, whereas Gen Con was just gaming and tabletop and this gathering of people, everyone bringing their friends, their families, their gaming tables to this place where they can be surrounded by that level of acceptance is just it's something unique. And if
Yeah.
you're listening to this and you've not gone to Gen Con, even if it's once in your life, guys, make the trip. Try it out. It's like you literally won't be traveling further than I had to get to the god thing. But but no, I not once have I ever gone to a Gen Con and gone, wow, that was such a waste of time, or wow, I really didn't enjoy myself. I got to the end of it completely destroyed, like stamina and physical wise, and then turned around and got, oh my god, I cannot believe that just happened, and I want to do it again right now.
Yep. I for like I said, this is our first year going. I have a countdown widget. It's probably the only widget I've actually installed, gone on my way to install on my phone, and it's just counting down to Gen Con. Because yeah, exact same thing. I mean, PAX Unplugged is coming up soon, and there are other conventions, but yeah, we've been to PAX. PAX, you nailed it. It's video games with some D&D and some Magic Gathering stuff thrown in there, but it's nothing really compares like that. Borderline week. Between travel time and everything. Like even the journey there and the journey back home, you're hyped. Like even all the way back, you're like, that was great. Wow, and then you're like home and you just collapse. But like
Yeah.
it was really fun and really neat, and we definitely can't wait to go back. Um, it, I wish the world had more things like that, and it's such a big event. Maybe that's not really feasible. We all just get this out of our system once a year, and that's why it's so great. Maybe, but I'm glad it exists, and we're definitely going to be attending next year and hopefully every year after that, as long as they'll have us.
Yeah, that's
Oh yeah,
amazing.
no, we'll
And
definitely be going back.
yeah, I'm also trying to make it into a regular thing. Originally I hadn't intended to. I originally planned to do it like every couple of years.
Yeah.
But things are moving quite well with some of the shows that I'm in, including of course Careful Cantrip. which are the people who I was doing stuff with at Gen Con. And I'm slowly starting to work on a few things with Paizo as well. And with any luck, yeah, once if all that works out, I might be going from like the idea of going every second year to actually, yeah, attending, probably attending every year if I can.
Oh, that's amazing. Our focus on this podcast and this channel in general has been Dungeons and Dragons, but I got to spend some time at Gen Con talking to Rudicki about Pathfinder and everything they've got coming up with Starfinder and such. And since then, Richard has been on this big we need to play Starfinder kick. And I'm like, just do it, please. Like I'm there with you. I want to play in this world. And part of this was also is we were already having these discussions like on like day 2, and then we went to your game of the yoink, it's not D&D, it's Pathfinder, and then he's like, look, and we're like, yeah, like this is literally what we needed to like this is the transition example.
I love that. Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. So there's a big ongoing joke about me being the Pathfinder guy. And usually because and look, like I tell this to people all the time. Pathfinder's a very robust system. I don't say it's complex because I teach it to 10-year-olds. It's not complex. It's robust. There's a lot of stuff to it, right? But for me, because I have to learn and play so many different systems through the Breach, City of Mist, Kids on Bikes, Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons, Starfinder, millions of these things. I get rules wrong all the time. I make mistakes all over the shop. And it's always really funny because everything tends to default to Pathfinder because that's what I play the most. So like little things like when we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it's like, oh, he stood up, attack of opportunity. It's like, no, you don't provoke attacks of opportunity. You just spend half your movement, dag, you Pathfinder, you. And I'm like, And then, like little things like that. So when it came to planning for the Gen Con thing, it was, so what if I told them they're playing 5e characters, then just ran Pathfinder? And then I think we were talking about it. It was just like, well, as long as they have characters and don't have to like build characters in front of the audience. And I'm like, yeah, we'll work it out. It's fine. So that was, yeah, that was a lot of fun. And yeah, the group was amazing. I mean, the group is amazing. Like one of the best things about being in this industry is like getting to play games with my friends. Before I forget, I was gonna say, if you are looking at taking those first steps into Starfinder, let me know. I would be willing to run you guys like a podcast one shot for you guys to have on your channel if you would like an introduction to Starfinder.
You're a madman.
That would be amazing.
Look, honestly, I love games, and if there's a opportunity for me to introduce people to Pathfinder or Paizo product and stuff, the reason I'm so obsessed with it is because I love it. It is one of my favorite things to do. Like my two favorite systems are, I say Pathfinder, closely followed by a game called Through the Breach, which is done by the folks at Weird. Another amazing game. If you love Deadlands, check that one out. And Starfinder. I love these games. I wish I had more people who knew how to run them. So in order to make that happen, I usually offer myself, especially for people who haven't played and want to try it out. I'm like, yeah, no, hit me up. I'll make the time, I'll make the effort, and we'll run a game. We'll have a lot of fun. We'll be great.
One of those pay it forward things too.
Yeah.
Like if I run this for you, Richard, you have to run a game for someone else.
Oh, I'm so interested in running Starfinder. And actually that was kind of my next question to you, which you've kind of answered roundabout, which is when you're doing this stuff, when you're running these games over there, you're chiefly running Pathfinder then, right?
Yeah, well, okay, so at the youth center, I run, at the moment, I'm running Pathfinder first edition on one table and second edition on another table. But that game, mostly the children dictate what they want to play. So sometimes we'll get into that, or sometimes they'll be like, hey, let's play some D&D, or hey, maybe we need to play some Maximum Apocalypse, or Through the Breach, or, let's play, oh, I heard of this new game system, let's try it out. Weirdly enough as well, I've used some of my benefits from being a content creator with the kids. So I'll often be given beta scripts or things that are about to go on Kickstarter to try out. and I use them
Nice.
as my guinea pigs to be like, hey, cool, guess what? Free League just sent me a copy of The Walking Dead. We're gonna learn how to play because I need to learn how to play, and by teaching it, I
Right.
learn a little bit more. And so they enjoy that, and they love the experience and stuff to try out those different things. So
Yeah.
so in short, yes, Pathfinder is still my most played, and on my channel I have my Patreon games, which are all Pathfinder. Uh, but I do regularly shift to other games. Plus, whenever I'm on other channels, usually we're playing D&D. So like
Yeah.
I do a ton of guest spots on different channels. Like I know D20 Deathmatch has their own game system. Careful Cantrip uses D&D. Quincy's Tavern uses D&D. I'm playing City of Mist with the crew over at One Shot Questers. Just yeah. You can see why I have trouble with rules.
Yeah, you're kind of doing everything.
It- we've recently branched out and started playing, dipping our toes into different systems and such. And for the most part, they seem to, at least the ones we've picked, been dice pool systems, or still like D6 in one way or another. But other than Richard being interested in Starfinder now, nothing has been overly complicated. When I say overly complicated, just because Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is the more complicated. Not saying it's very complicated, because it's pretty streamlined. Other than, every once in a while the players are like, why do you not remember the rules for literally everything? I'm like, please just tell me what your spell does. Just read the
Yep.
line. Remind me, please.
Oh yeah, no, I,
But
I I very unashamedly do that. I tell this to all my players. Listen, I will forget your name. I will forget what you're
yep.
doing. I will forget what your abilities are because the only thing I expect from you is to know your name, know who you are, and know what's on your character sheet. That's it.
Yes,
I
right.
don't need you to know anything else. But if I ask you what Scorching Ray is, it's like, yes, I know Scorching Ray. I know Scorching Ray fires a bunch of rays, and I know that they do D6 damages. But you need to tell me how many you fire and what I need to do if I need to make a saving throw, which I don't because it's an
Mhm.
attack action. But nonetheless, you need to be able to tell me that, not the other way around.
Right.
Yeah, because I'm not the book. You have the book. That's what you use to make this character. So take it, make it,
Mhm.
make it a whole thing. But there's a
Please
nice
help
way
me
to do
carry
it.
this burden.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, and that's actually swinging back a little bit to the mental wellness thing. Let's talk about that
Yeah,
a little bit. Carrying
please.
a burden. There is definitely a weight that GMs carry, a certain responsibility, where if you accept the role of a GM, you feel as though you are facilitating the fun for everyone. Now, there are times where you are going to have a bad game. You're going to have an absolute horror story of a game. It will happen. There's no avoiding it. There's no pretending like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
When that happens, you need to remember a couple of things. The first is that GMing is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be something you enjoy that enriches you in the same kind of way as playing would, where you feel as though facilitating this game has made your friends happy and has made you happy. If you ever get to a point where you're GMing out of obligation or because you absolutely don't want to, but you don't want to disappoint everyone, it's okay to take a break. It's okay to do that in the middle of a game. You could have a scene that is just a little too heavy, turn around to your players and say, hey guys, that was a lot of fun, but I just need a quick break. Let's take 5, go grab a drink, go to the bathroom and stuff like that. I'm going to prep the next encounter, have a bit of a moment to myself, and then keep
Yeah.
going. That is okay. It is perfectly okay for you to do that as a GM because it's a weight. The secret is no one tells you this when you become a GM, but your real skill is continually losing against your players and having
Yeah.
that be okay. That's it.
Oh,
That's the trick.
I tell mine all the time. I'm like, look, I'll never understand this player versus DM mentality unless it's the DM or GM that is purposely setting that up. They're the red skull of the DMs.
Yeah.
But
That's it.
it's my joy from this game when I'm running a game is when the players succeed. I do
Mm,
not want the big bad to beat them at the end of the game, because that doesn't feel good for me either. I
yeah.
want them to have leveled from these like low level adventures at level 1 all the way up to 12 or something, and then beating the vampire lord at the end of a campaign, and everybody celebrates, and we get to have each player tell me what their character does, over the rest of their life or next few months. And I give this big like grand outro or something in the campaign. We put a bow on it and we put that away in the memory box. I don't want to be like, oh yeah, and then that's how it goes, I guess. And then I'd tell a really somber ending and eventually ask everybody like, okay, do you want to try that again with like other characters or something, or do we just leave it at that? And it's weird there. No, I want everyone to succeed. That's the point of this. We're all winning together. I don't ever want to be the sole victor and my players are sad. That's awful. I don't want that at all.
I mean, he says this, but then we recently just played 10 Candles.
That's a very different game. That one started off
in which it ended very poorly for everyone involved.
And I told you up front before this game ever began, I'm like, this is a game where no one will live. You will all unfortunately pass at the end.
Yeah.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
Yeah, and that's one of those interesting games too, though. 10 Candles, which we just played recently, Quietest, which we played recently, as well as Alice is Missing, which we played a little while ago as well, which are all very heavy games for everyone involved, game masters and players. So yeah, that's one of those games where, like especially Alice, that was I think one that was pretty big, where you kind of had to step back for a second and had to like really think about what you were playing and how emotionally invested everybody was getting in the game.
Yep, that's another one. It's been months since we finished that one. That one came up today, like at work.
Yeah, we still talk
conversation
about
today
those types of games. Yeah,
and it's like, man, could we play that again? Like I mean, I'm sure we could. Like if we were introducing it to new, like a mostly new group, could me and Richard be involved in that game again and play different characters and stuff? Absolutely, we could. But the emotional weight of that first run around, it's gonna stick with us forever.
No, absolutely. I understand. I played a 10 Candles game at PAX Australia, not this year, but the year previously, with some performers and actors, and it got super, like there were tears, there was a whole mess of things. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think with those particular games, it's also important to have those check-ins as well. Where your emotional stress is and where your head's at. I, as a GM, see, here's the thing. I'd like to consider myself like a Guardians of the Galaxy GM, going back to the Marvel stuff. What I like to do is I like grand adventures. I like people to be able to play silly buggers, but then when it's time to like ride or die, you put your big boots on and you do the thing. The only time people will tend to die is when, in my head at least, I have no cause, reason, or rhyme to help you not die, and that's it. Actually quite yesterday we had a player death on one of my Patreon games, and this person had died 3 times over the course of the adventure with the same character. With just some fiddly stuff that happened with his bloodline and some magic and his ancestors and stuff. And he got resurrected a couple of times and yada yada. In this particular instance, the group was traveling in a narrow cave system where a frost giant was trying to get past them. The frost giant just basically said, move out of the way. He was being a douchebag, giant trapped underground. He's just like, get out of my way, yada yada yada. And the group, some of the group moved, and some of the group decided, no, we're going to attack this guy because he's a right? And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And as they started attacking it, he's like, hey, you're attacking me. I'm going to attack you back. And turned around and then whopped the person who did the most damage to him, which happened to be the sorcerer in close proximity. Sorcerer got cleaved in half and ripped into pieces. Now, for me, in that moment, I was like, I don't need to hit you twice. But here's the thing. Everything that follows this point is supposed to be super scary, super dangerous, and very much you are traveling in the in the warren of a hag coven, right? This is supposed to be something terrifying. Right now, you guys are kind of like, this is a picnic. Doop, 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 diddle, doop, 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 diddle, doop, doop, doop. Oh, a frost giant. Hey, Mr. Frost Giant, you were mean to us, so we're going to stab you. And it's like, are you now? Okay, I guess. And in that moment, it was just, okay, they are in the fuck around and find out mode. They're about to find out.
Yep.
And and they found out. They found out frost giants are not something easily meddled with. Um, so in those regards, like that's where I guess death and stuff like that happen in my games. Very rarely will it be an unceremonious death, unless it's like an NPC. But what follows is equally important, and that is what happens after the character dies. Are you going to have
Mhm.
a character death that is just, oh, well, cool, we're going to keep going and you can go make a new character? Or you can try to give them an epilogue, an actual bookend to their adventure, which is what I prefer to do. So with this
Yeah.
particular character, I then had this person sort of awaken in the realm of the dead, guided by someone who is a spokesperson for the realm of the dead, who tries to help people come to terms with the fact that they have passed on, making sure that they aren't remaining with any unfinished business. So they sat down with them in this beautiful garden. There was water trickling over this small pond with fish in it. And they started talking about their life, talking about the things that they had achieved, things that they had done, things that they would have preferred to have done, and to realize that they could let those things go by allowing their allies to take this burden off them. And once they shed that burden, they were able to pass on. And we had
Hmm.
that whole scene where they then did, you know, pass over the bridge and disappear. Now, unfortunately, he was going to a bad place because of the deal that he
Oh
had
no.
struck in order to stay alive. So it was kind of like this, like almost like Infinity Wars moment. We're making lots of Marvel references. Can you tell I like Marvel? Anyway, so as they started crossing over the bridge, the water in the pond turned to acid, and the bridge itself started to rot and decay and fall into the water as he was walking across the bridge. His clothes
Oh,
started to like sear off, and eventually he just kind of had this peaceful look on his face as he just like him, the bridge, and the water just like transformed into dust, and then it returned back to the beautiful garden, and no sign of him remained. For me, I was like,
Oh,
that was
beautiful.
great. It was so beautiful. It's such an amazing thing because, long story short, he sold his soul to his ancestor who was a black dragon,
Okay.
and so that's where the acid and the decay and the rot and all that sort of stuff came in. So it was such a good moment. But I think if I had instead just like fast forwarded us to just continuing on, who cares if he died? I feel like that as a player, you've put so much effort and time into this character and it's just over. You know, I don't get to role play this character anymore. I don't get to do anything with this character anymore. But those scenes kind of give you that chance to actually grieve, to mourn, to say farewell.
Yeah. You really nailed it there, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier with you kind of put a piece of yourself in these characters, and if I spent all this time, and you really do, you spend hours and hours, sometimes like days, just of gameplay time with your friends and stuff, embodying these characters like that are little bits of me and little bits of each other, and to just have it snuffed away and to not get that closure, that's rough. But to have some moments like you just mentioned, and be able to like, okay, these are the last moments I'm gonna play this character. I'm gonna
Mm.
I'm gonna get some things off my chest. I'm gonna do it right. I'm gonna say what I need to say, and yeah, that's it. And then you can feel like the character gets closure as well as the player, and I
Yeah,
think that's wonderful.
yeah, absolutely. And that's what it's all about. You know what I mean? Like it's we're not here to make people cry. We're not here to be the big cheese and try to win this game. We're here to tell a
Yeah,
story and have a journey with each other and be a part of that journey together. And it's so wonderful to be able to get to see people's reactions to moments like that. To see moments where everyone gets to just have that piece of the story focused on them, what they're doing, and um, be accepted. It's like with Gen Con, being accepted by the people around you. Because what are we doing if not making a mass hallucination that everyone is buying into?
right. But it's such a fun time, though. I'm glad we get to get to experience all this with people like you, Dag. And this community is amazing. I love it.
Yeah. Mm.
Really quick before we wrap up for today, even though I would love to just go for actual hours. Any last things you want to get across, Dag?
I guess the one thing that I've got to say is, whatever your TTRPG wants and needs, why ever you happen to be playing this game, remember there is only one true rule when it comes to TTRPGs, and that is you are allowed to have all the fun you want so long as it is not at the expense of someone else at the table. Have a great time.
Yep.
Have an amazing journey. Don't be afraid of the bad moments because they will make you stronger. Embrace the good moments because they're beautiful and they will solidify your love of the game. And most importantly, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to make yourself stand out. Don't be afraid to be yourself around these people that are near you. Chances are they're going through or have been through something similar. And this is just a great middle ground meeting place where we can share the one uniting love that we have for this game with one another.
You can make me cry, Dag. I don't know if you make this stuff up on the spot, but man, you're really good at it.
Yeah, oh, well, it's almost like it's my job.
Well, good. You're overqualified, if nothing else. Well, last thing I'll ask of you then tonight. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you?
Well, people can find me over on my Twitch channel for the most part at twitch.tv/deadausiegamer, where I do a ton of live streams, mostly live plays with fellow comrades in arms, as well as my Patreons. I do a game with Careful Cantrip, which is a group of TTRPG streamers on twitch.tv/Careful Cantrip. We've recently wrapped up our campaign 2. The finale was quite epic, so if you would like to see what I was talking about in terms of ending games and stuff like that, that's a great place to start. I'm also a GM running stuff with none other than Duke from One Shot Questers. We are just wrapping up our second act, I guess, of a podcast that we're doing called Monsters in the Mist, where we play a City of Mist game, which is a modern take on role-playing adventure where a group of individuals are trying to put the monsters back into the monster manual in a modern day city. And that's what I'm up to at present.
I mean, you're up to more than most folks, so I don't have time for it all. I know you said your job, but wow. Do you sleep?
Yeah, I think right now my schedule is 12 games a week, I want to say.
Wow. Oh man.
I do about 12 games a week.
But that's so cool. Well, yet again, for real, thank you for making time for us.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it.
It was
my
a blast
pleasure.
talking to you, and this is a subject that's very important to us, and it seems near and dear to your heart as well, and I'm sure it's going to come up again for us, but thank you so much. But for now, I've been Tyler,
and I've been Richard.
This is where you say, and I've been Michael or Dad.
Oh, and I've been Michael, the Dead Aussie Gamer.
And we've been
True Strike.
Bye. Hey, adventurers. Thanks again for joining us today. Please be sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. If there's any questions you'd like to write into the show, you can hit us up on Threads or Instagram. New episodes release every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for listening to True Strike.